Today I'm talking about the 12 books that I have finished in the last couple of weeks, so grab a cup of something and let's dive in. Hey there friends, welcome back. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Melissa. I'm the dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Company, and I am an avid reader. So in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've finished several books. I'm going to go through 12 of them now. I did not physically read 12 books. For those of you that are new, I get through a lot of audiobooks, particularly when I'm in my dye studio. I typically have a audiobook running. If I am in the truck, I have an audiobook on. Sometimes I will sit and knit and listen to an audiobook. So I do get a lot of books read simply through audiobooks. So today I thought I would go through 12 books that I have recently read, and I'm just going to go through pretty much in the order that I read them. So the first book is A Mother Always Knows by Farrah Strohmeyer. This was a book that I had an advanced copy of. It's an author that I have followed for, I don't know, like a decade now. And this was a book that was kind of outside of what she normally writes. This is a thriller. For me, it was a 4-star read. We're following Stella, and Stella is a millennial. She's just working at the public library. The thing about Stella is she was witness to her mom's brutal murder in this cult. And so she's living under this assumed name. And then a true crime podcaster kind of outs her as to who she is, where she is, pretty much doxes her. And she is now determined to go back to the cult that she had lived under and kind of seek answers to her mom's murder. For me, this is the type of thriller that really, there's a lot of atmosphere to it. There's enough suspense that it keeps you turning the pages. I think this is the perfect read for fall because it just has that kind of fall mood, fall vibe, a little bit of mystery, just enough twists that I think are perfect when the weather is turning. The next book that I read is called Pugs and Kisses by Farrah Rochon. This was, for me, another 4-star read. It was a delightful romance novel. We are following Evie and Bryson. They are both veterinarians. Bryson happens to be a veterinary surgeon. And Evie seems to have the perfect life. Maybe a little on the boring side, but perfect. But she ends up losing her fiance, losing her job. And so at that point, she doesn't really know what her next steps are going to be. So she kind of heads back home and is working in a animal rescue, but in a veterinary capacity. This is a second chance romance. I loved it as a dog lover. I think any dog lover will love this. It takes place in New Orleans. So it is technically the second book in the Doggone Delightful series. The first one was called Pardon My Frenchie. I have not read that book, but it is definitely on my TBR now because I loved this one so much. So the next book that I read is called The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold by Ali Carter. This is the second book. Let me just look at, it's the second book in a series called The Blonde Identity. And in The Blonde Identity, we were following a young woman who has basically had a head injury. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know why. She's being pursued by some really awful people. Lo and behold, it turns out she's a CIA agent. She's a spy. In this one, we're kind of following up on that story, but we're also following her story, but also her rival CIA agent, which happens to be a love interest. This is an enemies to lovers scenario. I loved the first one. Now, I will admit that I have listened to both the first one and the second one. I have done them by audio, and I think the narration is fantastic. So for me, this follow-up was a 4-star. This was the type of story that I don't like mysteries. I'm not really into a bunch of mystery suspense. I love a good thriller, but I'm not into mysteries. And this is not really mystery, but it is just funny, just laugh out loud funny. So if you're looking for, I don't want to say cozy mystery, this might, I can't even say it's a cozy mystery. Let's see, what does Goodreads classify it as? They call it a contemporary romance. They do classify it under mystery and thriller. It's definitely heavier on the romance, not so much thriller or mystery. I think these are just a really good time. If you like the Finley Donovan series, I think you'll like this. I think if you like the old, like, Janet Ivankovich, the Stephanie Plum series, where we're like 30 some books deep. If you like that kind of stuff, I think you'll love this. It just has more romance than either of those do. So the next book that I read was another, The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold. That was an advanced audio copy for me. The next one I finished was The Peculiar Gift of July by Ashley Ream. This was an advanced book as well for me. This was a 4-star read, but I will say that this was a much slower paced book than I typically enjoy. I will admit that I do like a pretty fast paced book. This one is, for me, it felt kind of long-winded but a very emotional story. So in this one, we're basically following the story of July. She is a young girl. I want to say she's about 14, and she ends up in the hands of Child Protective Services. She doesn't have a mother. She doesn't know who her father is. The person, her guardian, is now deceased. I think it was her aunt. It's been a while. And so she is kind of, I don't want to say dumped, but it feels like she's just kind of dumped on the next closest relative, who is a cousin. And so we're really kind of diving into the grief and the healing and just a lot of human connection. So it is a deeply emotional story. And for me, there were some lulls in it, but overall, the book as a whole, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, 4 stars, because for me, I like things a little faster. There were times where I felt like maybe we could have skipped a few things. There were moments where I would drift off, kind of drift off in my thoughts, and I'd kind of lose, like, what character are we dealing with right now? So, but definitely a great book. The next book that I listened to is called Life is a Lazy Susan of Shit Sandwiches. And this was authored by Jennifer Welsh and Angie Sullivan. If you are not familiar with them, they are 2 women from Oklahoma. There was, I want to say, 1 or 2 seasons on Bravo, a show called Sweet Home Oklahoma, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's been a really long time. But they were the two women that were cast in this. They do have a podcast now called, I think it's called I've Had It. I really enjoy them. I will tell you right now, they are extremely liberal. They're kind of like two blue dots in a red state. So if that end of the political spectrum is not your cup of tea, this is not going to be the book for you, because though they do kind of have essays in there where they're kind of talking about the trials and tribulations that they've gone through life. Like there's talk of addiction, divorce, all those sorts of things, adultery, everything that they've had to deal with in their life. They rarely touch much on their time on Bravo, but they do kind of connect a lot of it back to present day and kind of the political environment that we're currently in. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I didn't give it a star ranking. It was probably a 4-star listen for me, just because I'm familiar with them. So this is definitely going to swing one way or the other. I would say if you are somewhere in the middle or left leaning, then you would probably enjoy this. But if you are right leaning, this may not be the book for you. The next book that I listened to is a relatively new book. It's called Only Lovers in the Building by Nadine Gonzalez. I really wanted to like this book. However, I have never watched Only Murders in the Building, whatever that show is with like Selena Gomez and I think Steve Martin. I've never seen that show because, again, mystery's not my thing. And I believe that is what this book is kind of framed around, because all our characters live in this building, sort of like my understanding of that show. All the characters in the show are in the same building. So I wanted to like this, but it was only a 3-star read for me. It felt very immature. For me, it almost felt like I was reading, if I didn't know it was an adult novel, I don't know that I would have guessed that. And I think it was the narration that did it in for me. Like the narrators sounded immature, and in the way they used their voices with inflections and stuff, it just, I think maybe if I had read this book, like physically read it, I wouldn't have had the same experience. But there was something about the narration of this book that really kind of grated on me. So the next book I read was called The Code for Love by Anne Marsh. This was a 4-star read for me. It was kind of a 3, kind of a 4. We're following a main character who is a computer programmer. Like she writes, like builds apps, codes for apps. So for me, I don't know if it was me, the writing style, but I had difficulty at first. I was kind of challenged trying to get into the head of our female main character. But once I actually settled into the story, I was all in for it. She's very much a workaholic, and then her ended up being love interest is like this famous surfer who like moves in next door and is constantly coming over and kind of pestering her. But the story overall was really kind of layered. The characters did feel rather authentic. And in the end, they were both lovely lead characters in this romance story. But the story itself is about these two characters. She's writing an app. She pitches an idea to like the CEO of her company, because the app the crew is working on is going nowhere. It's just like bug after bug after bug, and it needs to be scrapped. And she comes up with this other idea of a travel app that basically you fill out this questionnaire. It's basically a dating app, but for travel partners. And so she ends up getting the help of her neighbor and friends, and they get all these surveys filled out. And then in the meeting, her boss, makes her trial it, and she actually gets paired with her neighbor, which she can't really stand. So they have to go on this excursion that this app has now mapped out for them. And so you're kind of following that journey. Overall, it was a really cute story. And I think once you get into the head of the main character, you can get past that chronic workaholic round the clock stuff. It's a cute story. So the next book that I read was another advanced copy for me. It's called Anywhere with You by Ali Palmer. This was hands down a 5-star read for me. I loved this book. It is a contemporary romance. And I had not read Ellie Palmer's, her debut novel. This is her sophomore novel, and it was fantastic. Her first one, of course, is now in my to-be-read pile. So in this one, we're following Charlie, and Charlie is now recently divorced. Her husband divorces her after like a year of marriage, and she's just kind of languishing in her legal career. And then her sister calls and says that she's eloping, and her sister has been on again, off again with this guy. And so with the help of Charlie's best friend Ethan, who has like a Sprinter van, that's decked out for traveling, they jump in it, and it's this road trip across Minnesota to get to her sister to try and stop this wedding. And so this is a friends to lover story. Hands down, I loved it. I don't really want to spoil too much, but it was a really good read. I went through it lightning quick. So the next book that I read is The Days I Loved You Most by Amy Neff. This was another 5-star read for me. And it is a giant love story in a book. So we're essentially following the story of Joseph and Evelyn. They are a married couple who their story goes back all the way to 1941 when they were childhood neighbors. Their beach homes were right next to each other. And so this story is going to kind of bounce back and forth through the timeline from when they met to, when they fell in love. But the current day timeline is about 60 years forward from when they first met as children. And so they have gotten basically this staggering, tragic news about Evelyn's health. And I don't think I'm giving it away. Yeah, it's on the dust jacket. But essentially, Evelyn gets this tragic, just heart-stopping diagnosis, and it's basically going to take her fairly quickly, or it's going to make it within a year's time. She's not going to be cognitive to what's going on around her. And he's decided that he cannot live without her. So they basically sit their 3 grown children down to tell them that a year from now, they're going to take their lives. And so we spend the length of this novel kind of going through their love story, and it is beautiful. It's heartbreaking. It is bittersweet. It has a lovely ending, though again, it is incredibly bittersweet. So while this I know that synopsis feels incredibly sad and tragic. I will say it is the type of love story that really got you kind of thinking about grief and living life to the fullest. And it just basically asks you, if you are in the final chapters of your love story, of your own personal love story, what would you do? All right, now that I've gotten myself back together, that is a really great book. If you can handle the overarching theme, it is a beautiful story. So the next book that I read was, again, an advanced reader's copy. It's called If All Else Fails by Emma St. Clair. I so desperately wanted this to be another 5-star read for me, but it did ultimately miss the mark. It only got 4 stars. The premise is that we're following Josie, and Josie and her brother plan these like excursions. They don't see a whole lot of each other, and so he sent her this address, and they're going to have this super sibling summer extravaganza. And so she shows up. It looks like this dilapidated, like falling down cottage. And it turns out her brother's best friend is there, recovering from like a hockey injury. She doesn't like him because she's known him since they were kids. It's her brother's best friend. And I had a hard time connecting with these characters on a deeper level. Like, I felt like I never really got much further than surface level. Like, some of their decision making and their general dynamic just didn't really resonate with me. But the book itself was charming and heartfelt, and overall it was a good story. I just anticipated more from it, which is no fault of the authors. That's just me having expectations set maybe a tad too high. So the next book I read was Sunburned. This was another advanced reader copy for me, and this one got 3 stars for me. This was not a book that I enjoyed, and we're basically following a main character who has skeletons in her closet. She's being threatened that those skeletons could be exposed, and it has to do with her past. There were so many characters in this. Number one, I didn't like any of the characters, and when I don't like characters, I have difficulty investing in them. And it's not even that we have an unreliable narrator or just a morally gray character. Like, I just didn't care about these characters. It was really challenging for me to kind of keep the multiple plot lines situated. I probably could have given this 2 stars. Like, I really had to work to get through this book. And I'm not huge on DNFing. I've never DNF'd a book that I've agreed to read an advanced copy of with a publisher. I will always try and push through. But the premise itself was okay. I wasn't invested in their journeys. And for me, I'm very character driven. I want to like the characters. Even the morally gray ones or unreliable narrators, I still want to have a good time. It is a character-driven story. Just didn't like any of them. The next book I finished was The Locked Ward. This was a book that I had an advanced copy of, but I did go with my sister to hear this author speak. She is local to the DC metro area. She lives, I want to say, in I think I know where what town she lives in, but she says that she's from Washington, D.C., but I do believe she lives on the Maryland side. Anyway, so since she's local, she did a speaking gig the day after this was published, and my sister had gotten us tickets to go and listen. And I had actually finished this book before I got to the author event. I loved this book. We are following Georgia. And here's the thing, Georgia is sitting in a locked psychiatric ward and we're talking the type of psychiatric ward for the most violent of offenders. And she's awaiting trial because she's being accused of killing her adopted sister. Georgia is adopted by a rather wealthy, affluent family. She is accused of killing her sister. And she reaches out to her biological sister. But her biological sister, Amanda, didn't realize that she had a twin. They are twins that were separated at birth and adopted by two different families. And so the only thing that Georgia can seem to say to her sister is I didn't do it. And so Amanda now has to figure out, like, how trustworthy is this woman who claims to be my sister? And I think I'm always drawn to a story about sisters. I am a sister to a sister. So I am always drawn to books about sisters and sibling stories in general. I think siblings, it's one of the most unique relationships you can be gifted in life. And so this was a really great, twisty thriller. I can't say that I saw all the twists coming. And I will tell you that Sarah Pekkanen will come right out and say, like, she doesn't try to make things like super twisty, but she'll breadcrumb you enough to make it worth your time. And this one was definitely a 5-star read for me. I loved this one. The next book that I read was Five Broken Blades by Mia Corland. This is a book that I have owned since May of 2024. And I really wanted to like this. We're following five assassins who have been brought together to try and kill the king. And while I did enjoy aspects of this story, there were different assassins that I was particularly drawn to. But overall, this is way too much fantasy, not enough romantasy. There's like a hint of it in there, but not enough to keep me as engaged as I wanted. I did tag team this one with the audio version, thinking that would help. And I do think it came across better for me in audio format. But it's not a bad book. It's just not the right book for me. There are a couple more books in this series. I think there's one that starts with 4 and then one that starts with 3. I think it's counting down. I don't have any interest in continuing the story. And then the last book that I read was Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. This is a very short, sort of like novella story on Audible. For Audible. It was okay. I gave it 4 stars. Ali Hazelwood is known for really spicy romance reads. This one is an audiobook. It's only about 4.5 hours long. And we're following Viola, and she's a video game, writer. And she has the opportunity to basically design a video game based off of her all-time favorite book series. And the co-lead on the project is her arch nemesis. So we are enemies to lovers. It's a cute little story. I gave it 4 stars. It's not her best work. I mean, I do know some people who loved it and thought it is fantastic, but I still really love some of her other ones. I don't think it's the best that she's ever done. I think it was actually 13 or 14 books. My list is 13, and I think it was actually 14 books. Man, I don't know where I got 12 at the beginning of this video. But that is all I have for you today. If you made it through all of this, congratulations. And I'd love to know, have you read any of these books? Did you have similar thoughts or opinions about them? If you've not read any of these books, go ahead and just give me a book emoji so I know that you made it through to the end of the video. And until next time, friends, happy reading.